Hello there, and welcome to Whispered Knowledge. I'm so glad you found your way here tonight. Maybe you've had one of those long days that seems to stretch endlessly, filled with thoughts that wouldn't quiet, worries that circled like birds unable to land. Maybe you're the kind of person who finds comfort in exploring the mysteries of the mind rather than counting sheep or watching the ceiling fan make its slow rotations. Maybe you tried to sleep and couldn't, and now you're here, looking for something to occupy your mind while your body finally settles into rest. Either way, you're in exactly the right place. There's no schedule to keep, no deadline to meet. You've got nothing to do but rest, nothing to accomplish, except allowing yourself to drift. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears. Feel your jaw unclench. Let your breathing slow to its natural rhythm, and allow your mind to become soft, receptive, ready to wander through interesting territories without effort or strain. Tonight's journey takes us deep into the human psyche, into those strange corners where science meets mystery, where what we know about the mind bumps up against what we simply cannot explain. We're going to wander through 100 unexplained facts about psychology, 100 moments where even the experts, the researchers who have dedicated their lives to understanding the mind, pause and admit there's still so much we don't know. These aren't ghost stories or fantasy, not supernatural claims or wild speculation. These are real phenomena, experienced by real people every day, documented by researchers and scientists with impeccable credentials, studied in laboratories and clinics around the world. And yet, despite all this attention, despite decades of research and countless studies, we still don't fully understand them. The mysteries remain. Some of what you hear tonight might surprise you, might challenge things you thought you knew about how minds work. Some might feel deeply familiar, like finally finding words for experiences you've had, but never been able to name. You might think, yes, that's happened to me. I thought I was the only one. And some will simply be curious, strange little quirks of the human mind that remind us how beautifully, mysteriously complex we are. Not machines, not computers, something far stranger than that. Something that feels from the inside like nothing else in the known universe. So settle in, get comfortable, pull the blankets up, find that perfect position where you could stay for hours, and let your mind wander with me through these unexplained territories of human experience. Let curiosity replace anxiety. Let wonder replace worry. Let mystery itself become a kind of comfort. And just before we begin, if these calm explorations help you unwind, if they give you a quiet way to end your day, or spark your curiosity as you drift towards sleep, consider liking and subscribing to the channel. It helps others find their way here too, one curious mind at a time. Now, let's begin our journey into the unexplained, the strange territory of memory. Memory feels so personal, so immediate, so reliable. You remember what you had for breakfast this morning, the face of your first love, the sound of your mother's voice calling your name when you were young. These memories feel solid, unchanging, like photographs stored in the albums of your mind. But memory is one of the most deceptive, mysterious, and unexplained territories of human psychology. It's not a video recording. It's not a file stored unchanged in the archives of your mind. Memory is something stranger, something more fluid, more creative, more prone to invention than we ever imagined. And we're only beginning to understand how strange it really is. Let me tell you about one of the most unsettling discoveries in memory research. It began with a conversation at a conference in 2009. A woman named Fiona Broome mentioned in passing that she remembered Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s. She didn't just vaguely recall it. She had specific memories: the news coverage, the televised memorial service, the international mourning, the riots in South Africa. The memories felt absolutely real, detailed, and certain. There was only one problem: none of it happened. Nelson Mandela did not die in prison. He was released in 1990 after 27 years of imprisonment. He went on to become the first democratically elected president of South Africa. He died in 2013 at age 95, in his home, surrounded by family. The death that Broom remembered so clearly, that she could visualize in such detail, had never occurred in this reality. She should have felt foolish, embarrassed by such a dramatic error. But something strange happened when she shared her false memory online. Thousands of people responded with the exact same impossible recollection. They too remembered Mandela dying in prison in the 80s. They too had detailed memories of an event that never happened. This became known as the Mandela Effect, and it opened up the entire field of study into collective false memories. Large groups of people sharing identical false memories of events that never occurred. And it wasn't just about Mandela. The phenomenon appeared everywhere once researchers knew to look for it. Thousands of people remember the children's book series as the Berenstain Bears, spelled with an EIN. They have specific memories of the book spines on their childhood shelves, but it was always Berenstain Bears, spelled with an AIN. Always. The books never changed, but the memory did, or rather, the memory was false from the start. The Mandela Effect reveals something profoundly unsettling about the nature of memory. Large groups of people can share identical false memories of events that never occurred. They don't just misremember in vague terms. They remember specific, detailed events that match perfectly across thousands of individual minds, yet correspond to nothing in recorded history. They remember the children's book series as the Berenstain Bears, when it was always Berenstain. They remember a movie from the 1990s called Shazam, starring comedian Sinbad as a genie, though no such film exists. They remember Darth Vader saying, "Luke, I am your father," when the actual line is, "No, I am your father." These aren't just individual mistakes, the kind of misremembering that everyone does from time to time. They're collective false memories, shared across thousands or even millions of minds, with a remarkable consistency in the details. People don't just vaguely feel that something was different. They have specific, confident, detailed recollections that turn out to be wrong. And when you tell them they're wrong, when you show them the actual evidence, many initially refuse to believe it. The false memory feels more real than reality. Scientists have proposed various explanations for the Mandela Effect. Maybe it's confabulation, where the brain automatically fills gaps in memory with plausible but incorrect information, creating false memories that feel indistinguishable from real ones. Our brains hate uncertainty, hate having gaps or contradictions, so we unconsciously smooth things over, creating coherent narratives, even if those narratives are fictional. The Berenstain spelling sounds more natural to English speakers than Berenstain, so perhaps thousands of children independently misread the name and then solidified that misreading into a false memory. Maybe it's the way memories get reinforced when we share them with others, discussing our recollections in online forums or with friends, and in the process of sharing, we adopt details from others' accounts, creating a kind of social contagion of false memory. Or perhaps it's something about the way our brains prioritize meaningful patterns over accurate details. We remember the gist of things, the emotional texture, the general narrative, but not necessarily the specific facts. And when we later reconstruct the memory, we fill in details based on what makes sense, what feels right, what fits with our expectations. The problem is, what makes sense to us isn't always what actually happened. Our expectations can guide us toward coherent but false memories that feel more authentic than the messy, sometimes surprising reality. But here's what remains truly unexplained, what keeps researchers puzzling over this phenomenon. Why do these specific false memories emerge? Why do so many people misremember in exactly the same way, with the same specific details? Why Berenstein instead of some other misspelling? Why do thousands of people share the same false memory of a Sinbad genie movie that never existed, rather than other imaginary movies? If these were just random errors in memory, we'd expect them to be more variable, more diverse. But the Mandela Effect shows clustering, patterns in collective misremembering that we cannot fully explain. Some researchers propose that these might not be memory errors at all, but rather examples of how suggestible human memory really is. Perhaps one person makes a mistake, posts it online, and through the power of suggestion, others adopt this false memory as their own. We see this in laboratory experiments. Expose people to misinformation after an event, and many will incorporate that misinformation into their memories, genuinely believing they witnessed things they did not. But this doesn't fully explain why certain false memories spread so widely while others don't, or why some false memories seem to emerge independently in multiple people before any social sharing occurs. The deeper mystery is about the nature of certainty itself. These false memories don't feel uncertain. People don't think, maybe it was Berenstein. They remember it being Berenstein. They would bet money on it. They're shocked when shown the actual spelling. The quality of confidence, the subjective sense of certainty, is identical between true and false memories. This reveals something disturbing. We cannot trust our sense of certainty. The feeling that a memory is absolutely, definitely real provides no actual guarantee that it is. Our minds assign confidence ratings to memories independently of accuracy, and we have no internal mechanism to distinguish between confident true memories and confident false memories. This fundamental unreliability of memorial certainty remains one of the greatest mysteries in cognitive psychology. Related to this is cryptomnesia, a phenomenon with a wonderfully mysterious name that perfectly captures its essence. The word comes from ancient Greek, crypto meaning hidden or secret, and mnesia meaning memory. Cryptomnesia occurs when you remember something but completely lose track of the fact that it's a memory. The source information, the context of when and where you encountered this information, simply vanishes. Instead, you experience the recalled information as a new, original thought or creation, something that arose spontaneously from your own mind. Your brain has hidden the memory's true origin from you, disguising the past as present creativity, making old information feel like fresh inspiration. This explains many perplexing cases of accidental plagiarism throughout history, instances where genuinely creative and honest people produced work that turned out to closely resemble someone else's earlier creation. The most famous case involves George Harrison and his song, My Sweet Lord, released in 1970 and one of the most successful singles of that year. It became a massive hit, topping charts around the world. But then listeners began noticing something. The melody bore a striking resemblance to He's So Fine by the Chiffons, a hit from 1963. The similarities were too close to be coincidental. The same melodic structure, the same harmonic progression, even similar backing vocals. The Chiffons publisher sued for copyright infringement. Harrison defended himself vigorously. He genuinely believed he had created the melody independently, with no conscious memory of copying He's So Fine. The court ultimately ruled that while Harrison had infringed copyright, it appeared to be unintentional. The judgment suggested this was a case of what psychologists call cryptomnesia, where Harrison had likely heard the chiffon song years earlier when it was a radio hit, and the melody lodged in his memory without conscious awareness, only to resurface years later, feeling like original inspiration. Similar cases abound in literature. The poet Samuel Taylor Coleridge, one of the founders of the English Romantic movement, claimed his poem Kubla Khan came to him fully formed in an opium-induced dream in 1797. He said he woke from the dream with 200 to 300 lines of poetry complete in his mind, wrote down 54 lines before being interrupted by a visitor, and then found he couldn't recall the rest. The poem he did write became one of his most famous works. In Xanadu did Kubla Khan a stately pleasure dome decree. The mysterious circumstances of its composition became part of literary legend. But scholars later discovered something interesting. Passages in Kubla Khan closely matched descriptions from Purchas His Pilgrimage, a travel book published in 1613 by Samuel Purchas, which itself drew on various travel accounts. Coleridge, who was extraordinarily well-read, had almost certainly encountered this book. Specific phrases and details from Purchas's descriptions of Xanadu appear transformed in Coleridge's poem. This suggests that Coleridge may have absorbed details from his reading years before, then unconsciously drawn on them when composing, with the dream serving as a mechanism for this creative recombination of forgotten material. Helen Keller, the deaf-blind writer and activist, faced accusations of plagiarism when she was just 11 years old. She wrote a short story called The Frost King and sent it as a birthday gift to Michael and Agnes, the director of the Perkins School for the Blind. The story was initially celebrated as a remarkable achievement, but then someone noticed that Keller's story bore striking similarities to The Frost Fairies by Margaret Canby, published in 1880. The stories weren't identical, but the plots, characters, and even certain phrases were remarkably parallel. Keller insisted she had no memory of encountering Canby's story and believed she'd created the Frost King independently. Investigation later revealed that the Frost Fairies had likely been read aloud to her years earlier, when she was much younger and before she had learned to write. The story had apparently entered her memory, been forgotten, then resurfaced years later with the subjective quality of original creation. Though cleared of intentional plagiarism, the accusation deeply affected young Helen Keller, creating lasting uncertainty about the reliability of her own creative process. The mystery isn't just that we forget sources, it's deeper than that. When cryptomnesia occurs, the borrowed material feels profoundly original. It carries the emotional signature of creativity, of new discovery. Your brain has so completely severed the connection to the original source that the memory arrives wearing a disguise. Psychologists understand that this involves failures in source monitoring, where the brain loses track of where information came from. But why does it feel so original? Why does the brain add that quality of newness to old information? This transformation remains unexplained. Then there's déjà vu, perhaps the most famous and universally experienced of all memory mysteries. The French term means already seen, and it describes that eerie sensation when the present moment feels as though you've lived it before. Not just something similar to a previous experience, not a vague sense of familiarity, but this exact moment, with this exact combination of sensory details, this precise sequence of thoughts and feelings, this specific configuration of light and sound and bodily sensation. You're absolutely certain you've been here before, doing this, experiencing these precise circumstances. The sense of repetition is overwhelming, undeniable, but you also know, rationally, that you haven't. You couldn't have. This is the first time this exact situation has occurred, and yet the feeling persists. I've lived this moment before. Research surveys indicate that somewhere between 60 and 70% of people report having experienced déjà vu at least once in their lives, with notably higher rates appearing among younger adults. The phenomenon seems to occur more frequently in people between ages 15 and 25, then gradually decreases with age, though researchers are still working to understand why youth might make someone more susceptible to this temporal experience. It also tends to happen more often when you're tired, stressed, or traveling, when your normal routines are disrupted and your brain is processing unfamiliar environments. Some people experience it multiple times a month. Others report having déjà vu only once or twice in their entire lives. The variability is puzzling. What makes some brains more prone to this experience than others? The leading scientific explanations involve various theories about neural misfiring or timing errors in the brain's memory systems. One proposal suggests that déjà vu occurs when information reaches consciousness through two slightly different neural pathways at fractionally different speeds, creating a doubled sensation where the present moment accidentally gets tagged as a memory before being processed as current experience. It's as if your brain receives the same information twice in rapid succession and interprets the second reception as memory of the first. Another theory proposes a brief glitch in the hippocampus, the brain region crucial for forming new memories and retrieving old ones. Perhaps during déjà vu, the present experience accidentally activates the memory retrieval system instead of or in addition to the encoding system, creating a sense that you're remembering rather than experiencing for the first time. Some researchers have pointed to the temporal lobe, particularly areas involved in both memory and emotion, as the likely source of déjà vu. Seizures in the temporal lobe, even very minor ones that don't produce obvious symptoms, can trigger déjà vu experiences. People with temporal lobe epilepsy often report frequent, intense déjà vu just before a seizure. This suggests that under certain conditions, the neural circuits that create the sense of familiarity can activate incorrectly, producing the feeling of recognition without appropriate memory content. But here's what we don't understand. Why does déjà vu feel so uncanny? It's not just recognition, it's recognition with an otherworldly quality, often accompanied by a sense of eeriness or even dread. What causes that specific emotional texture? And why do some people experience it frequently while others rarely or never do? The trigger mechanisms, the individual differences, and the phenomenological quality of déjà vu all remain partially unexplained. Déjà vu has cousins, lesser-known phenomena that are equally mysterious. Jamais vu, meaning never seen, is the opposite experience. Something familiar suddenly feels utterly strange and new. You look at a common word and suddenly it seems alien, like you've never encountered it before. You walk into your own bedroom and for a moment it feels like a stranger's room. You hear your name and it sounds foreign, like random sounds rather than the identifier you've carried your whole life. Jamais vu can occur with semantic satiation, where a word loses its meaning through repetition. Say any word over and over, 30 or 40 times, and watch what happens. Door, 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 door. At first it's a word, then it becomes sounds. The meaning drains away, leaving only phonetic noise. The brain's recognition systems temporarily shut down, unable to process the same input repeatedly. But we don't fully understand why this happens, or what protective or cognitive function it might serve. There's also presque vu, French for almost seen, which describes that frustrating moment when something is right on the edge of memory but won't quite surface. It's close. You can feel its shape, its emotional resonance. You know that you know it, but you can't quite retrieve it. This is the tip of the tongue phenomenon, and while researchers have documented it extensively, the exact mechanisms that create this particular experience of blocked retrieval remain mysterious. Why does the brain sometimes provide this tantalizing sense of almost remembering instead of either remembering or forgetting completely? Memory reconstruction itself is mysterious. When you remember an event, you're not accessing a stored file. You're reconstructing the memory from scattered pieces of information. And every time you remember something, you slightly alter it. This is why eyewitness testimony is so unreliable, why confident witnesses in court cases can be completely wrong. Elizabeth Loftus, a pioneering psychologist, demonstrated how easily false memories can be implanted through suggestion. People can be made to remember entire events that never happened, like being lost in a shopping mall as a child, complete with sensory details and emotional content. What remains unexplained is the subjective certainty that accompanies these false memories. People don't feel uncertain about them. They feel absolutely convinced, with the same quality of certainty as real memories. Why does the brain assign confidence to reconstructed or false memories? What system determines whether a memory feels real versus merely possible? The mechanisms behind memorial conviction remain elusive. There's also childhood amnesia, the curious fact that most people cannot remember anything from before the age of 3 or 4, despite forming memories during that time. Freud called it infantile amnesia and attributed it to repression. Modern neuroscience points to the ongoing development of the hippocampus and the lack of language to encode early experiences. But neither explanation is complete. Some people retain vivid memories from age 2 or even younger. Why the variation? And what exactly happens to those early memories? Are they truly lost or just inaccessible? The fate of our earliest experiences remains one of psychology's puzzles, perceptual mysteries and sensory crossings. If memory is unreliable, perception might be even stranger. We tend to think our senses give us direct access to reality, that we see what's there, hear what sounds, feel what touches us. But perception is an interpretation, a construction, and sometimes the brain creates experiences that defy everything we think we know about how senses work. Synesthesia is one of the most fascinating perceptual mysteries in all of psychology, a condition that challenges everything we think we understand about how senses work and how the mind organizes experience. The word means joined sensation. From the Greek syn, meaning together, and aesthesis, meaning sensation or perception. It describes a condition where stimulation of one sense automatically, involuntarily triggers an experience in another sense. Not a metaphor, not an association, an actual, genuine perceptual experience. For someone with synesthesia, sounds might have colors that they actually see, appearing in visual space as clearly as any physical color. Letters and numbers might have distinct, unchanging hues that have been the same since childhood. Words might carry tastes that arrive immediately upon hearing or reading them, as real as any flavor on the tongue. Music might create visual textures and patterns that morph and shift with the melodies. Time itself might have a spatial location, a three-dimensional structure they can navigate and explore. There are at least 60 documented types of synesthesia, possibly more, representing different possible combinations of sensory crossings. But the most common, occurring in about 70% of synesthetes, is grapheme color synesthesia, where letters and numbers are perceived as having inherent colors. For someone with this condition, The letter A might always appear red, not the ink color, but an actual color that seems to emanate from the letter itself. The number 5 might be green, 7 might be yellow, the letter M might be purple. These associations are completely consistent throughout the person's life, remaining stable across decades. They're automatic and involuntary, impossible to suppress or change through conscious effort. They're not metaphors or preferences or learned associations. They're genuine perceptual experiences, as real to the synesthete as the black ink on white paper is to everyone else. Imagine what this might be like. You're reading a book, but the text isn't just black on white. Every word is a rainbow. Every sentence a shifting pattern of colors. The word Tuesday is always blue-green. Mountain is brown. Quickly is silver. These colors don't come from the page. They arise in your mind, overlaying or adjacent to the actual visual input. For most synesthetes, the experience is pleasant, even beautiful. The world is more colorful, more textured, more rich with sensory detail than the average person's world. But it can be distracting. Reading can be slower. Certain color combinations can be jarring or unpleasant. And there's always the awareness that you're perceiving something others don't. Seeing or hearing or feeling extra layers of reality that remain invisible to most people. Research estimates suggest that around 4% of the population may have some form of synesthesia, though the true prevalence could be higher, since many synesthetes don't realize their perceptual experience differs from others. If you've experienced something your entire life, how would you know? It's not universal. Many synesthetes only discover their condition in adulthood, often by chance in a conversation where they mention that numbers have colors, and someone else reacts with confusion or disbelief. They assumed everyone experienced the world this way, learning that they're different, that they've been perceiving extra dimensions of sensory experience that most people can't access, can be both exciting and isolating. Brain imaging studies have confirmed that synesthesia involves real, measurable differences in how brains process information. When a synesthete with grapheme color synesthesia sees a letter, both visual processing areas and color processing areas in the brain activate together. The brain has somehow created pathways that connect sensory systems that are typically separate. In most people, seeing a letter activates shape processing areas. Seeing a color activates color processing areas. These systems operate independently, but in synesthetes, they're linked. Seeing the shape triggers color processing automatically. The cross-activation is real, observable with fMRI and other brain scanning technologies. This isn't imagination or memory association. It's hardwired neural connectivity. But here's what remains deeply mysterious. Why does synesthesia develop in some people and not others? Research suggests a genetic component, as the condition often runs in families. If one family member has synesthesia, other relatives are more likely to have it too, though not always. The genetic basis seems complex, involving multiple genes rather than a single mutation. But having the genes doesn't guarantee developing synesthesia. Environmental factors must matter too. One leading theory involves neural pruning during childhood development. Everyone might be born with extensive connections between different brain areas, cross-sensory linkages that create something like synesthesia in infancy. During normal development, most of these connections are pruned away, eliminated, leaving only the most useful, efficient pathways. But in synesthetes, some of these early connections are preserved, maintained through childhood into adulthood. Why? What determines which connections get kept and which get eliminated? Why are different sensory pairings preserved in different people? These questions remain unanswered, And then there's the profound phenomenological mystery that pushes at the edges of what we can understand about consciousness itself. What is it actually like to taste words, to see sounds as colors, to experience numbers as having spatial positions or distinct personalities? Synesthetes describe their experiences as real and vivid, not imaginary or metaphorical or remembered. When a sound color synesthete hears a trumpet, they don't think, "That reminds me of orange," or "That's associated with orange." They see orange, an actual visual experience triggered by auditory input. But how can sound create color? Sound waves are vibrations in air. Color is electromagnetic radiation of specific wavelengths. These are completely different physical phenomena. How does the brain create the experience of color from sound? What does this tell us about the relationship between physical stimuli and perceptual experience? These questions push against the boundaries of what we understand about consciousness and sensory experience, suggesting that the categories we use to organize experience, seeing versus hearing versus tasting, might be more flexible, more permeable, more arbitrary than we ever imagined. And then there's the phenomenological mystery. What is it actually like to taste words or see sounds? Synesthetes describe their experiences as real and vivid, not imaginary or metaphorical. But how can sound create color? How can a number have a taste? These questions push against the boundaries of what we understand about consciousness and sensory experience. Synesthesia reveals that the categories we use to organize experience, seeing versus hearing versus tasting, might be more flexible, more permeable than we ever imagined. There's also mirror touch synesthesia, an even rarer condition where people feel physical sensations when they see someone else being touched. Watch someone get their arm scratched and you feel a sensation on your own arm. See someone hug another person and you feel pressure on your torso. This involves hyperactive mirror neurons, brain cells that fire both when you perform an action and when you watch someone else perform it. But in mirror touch synesthetes, the system is dialed up so high that observation becomes physical sensation. The mystery here involves the boundaries of self and other. How does the brain normally maintain the distinction between what happens to you and what happens to someone else? In mirror touch synesthesia, that boundary seems partially dissolved. The implications are profound. It suggests that empathy might have a physical basis, that feeling with others might be more than metaphor. But we don't understand how the brain creates and maintains these boundaries, or why they break down in some individuals. Prosopagnosia, or face blindness, presents another perceptual mystery. People with this condition cannot recognize faces, even faces they've seen thousands of times. A severe prosopagnosic might not recognize their own face in a mirror, or photographs of themselves. They might not recognize their spouse or children by face alone, relying instead on voice, hairstyle, or context. Yet their vision is otherwise normal. They can describe faces, notice individual features, and see perfectly well. The mystery is specificity. Face recognition involves dedicated neural circuits in the fusiform gyrus, an area that specializes in processing faces. Damage to this area causes prosopagnosia, but the rest of visual processing remains intact. This reveals something strange about how the brain is organized. Why would evolution create such specific hardware just for faces? Why is face recognition so neurologically distinct from recognizing other objects? And what happens to social and emotional processing when face recognition fails? These questions remain only partially answered. Then there's the temporal perception puzzle. Time, unlike space, cannot be directly sensed. There's no time receptor in the body, yet we experience duration, sequence, and rhythm. We know when something has lasted too long or ended too quickly. We feel time slow down in moments of danger or speed up when we're engaged and happy. But how? The brain appears to have multiple timing systems for different scales. Millisecond timing for speech and music, second-to-minute timing for immediate experience, longer timing for planning and memory. These systems involve different brain areas and operate on different principles, but how they create the unified sense of temporality, the flow of time that structures all our experience, remains deeply mysterious. In moments of extreme stress or danger, time can seem to slow dramatically. The car accident that takes 3 seconds feels like it lasts for minutes. Every detail stands out with crystal clarity. This isn't just a memory distortion. People report experiencing time as genuinely slower during the event itself. Some researchers propose it involves increased attention and memory encoding, creating more detailed records that make the moment seem longer in retrospect. But others suggest something more fundamental, that the brain's internal clock actually changes its rate during crisis. Either way, the mechanisms behind temporal distortion remain unclear. There's also the moon illusion, a phenomenon that has puzzled observers for thousands of years. When the moon is near the horizon, it appears much larger than when it's high in the sky. But this isn't a trick of distance or atmosphere. The moon is actually slightly farther from you when it's on the horizon, and measurements confirm it takes up the same angular size in the sky regardless of position. Yet the illusion persists, powerful and convincing. Even when you know it's an illusion, the horizon moon still looks enormous. Dozens of explanations have been proposed. Some involve comparison with foreground objects, making the horizon moon seem larger by contrast. Others involve unconscious assumptions about distance and size. Still others propose the effect of the horizon itself, creating a kind of framing that influences size perception. But no single explanation fully accounts for the phenomenon. After millennia of observation and decades of research, the moon illusion remains unexplained. Change blindness and inattentional blindness reveal how much our perception misses. In change blindness, people fail to notice even dramatic changes to a visual scene if those changes occur during a brief interruption. Two people could swap places during a conversation if the swap happens during a momentary distraction, and you might not notice you're talking to a different person. In famous experiments, researchers show people photographs and ask them to spot differences between two versions. Even when objects change color, disappear, or move to different locations, people often fail to notice. Inattentional blindness is even stranger. When focused on a task, people can fail to notice obviously unusual things happening right in front of them. In one famous study, participants watched a video of people passing basketballs and were asked to count the passes. During the video, a person in a gorilla suit walks into the middle of the scene, thumps their chest, and walks off. About half of viewers, focused on counting passes, never notice the gorilla at all. They're not remembering and forgetting, they genuinely don't see it. Their attention is so focused that their brain doesn't process the unexpected stimulus. These phenomena reveal that consciousness is far more selective and limited than we imagine. We think we see our environment comprehensively, but we're actually constructing a very partial, highly filtered representation. What determines what makes it into consciousness and what gets filtered out? How does attention create these dramatic blindnesses? The mechanisms remain mysterious, challenging our assumptions about awareness and perception, sleep phenomena and altered states. When we sleep, consciousness doesn't simply turn off, It transforms, entering strange territories where the normal rules of experience don't apply. And some of the most unexplained phenomena in psychology occur in those liminal spaces between waking and sleep, where the boundaries of reality blur. Sleep paralysis is one of the most genuinely terrifying experiences the sleeping brain can generate. And if you've never had it, it's difficult to convey just how frightening it can be. Imagine this. You wake up, fully conscious, aware of your surroundings. Your mind is clear. You can hear sounds from outside your window, feel the texture of sheets against your skin, see the dim outlines of furniture in your bedroom. Everything seems normal except for one thing. You cannot move, not your arms, not your legs, not even your fingers. You try to speak, to cry out, but your voice won't work. Your jaw feels locked. You're completely paralyzed, pinned to the bed by invisible force, trapped in a body that has become a prison. And this alone would be terrifying enough. But often, there's more, much more. A sense of presence in the room. You can't see anyone, but you know someone is there. Something is watching you from the corner, from the doorway, from the end of the bed. You can feel eyes on you, hostile, malevolent. The certainty of not being alone is overwhelming despite seeing no one. And then the presence moves closer. You feel it approaching though you can't see it move. It comes nearer and nearer, and you cannot turn your head to look, cannot run, cannot even scream. You're utterly helpless. Sometimes a weight settles on your chest, heavy, crushing, making it difficult to breathe. You gasp for air, but your chest won't expand properly. You're suffocating, being smothered by something you can't see. Sometimes there are visual hallucinations, shadow figures, distorted faces, hooded shapes, malevolent entities that seem utterly, terrifyingly real. The experience typically lasts anywhere from a few seconds to a couple of minutes, though it can feel much longer. Time dilates during sleep paralysis. Those 90 seconds can feel like 15 minutes of absolute terror. Eventually, the paralysis breaks. You can move again. You gasp, sit up, heart pounding, drenched in sweat, convinced you've just survived some kind of supernatural attack. The rational part of your brain tries to reassert control, reminding you that sleep paralysis is a known phenomenon, a trick of brain chemistry, nothing supernatural. But emotionally, viscerally, it felt completely real. And many people who experience it once will experience it again, sometimes regularly throughout their lives. Physiologically, sleep paralysis occurs when consciousness returns, while the body's motor inhibition, the paralysis that normally prevents us from acting out our dreams, is still active. During REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, where most vivid dreaming occurs, the brainstem sends signals that paralyze all voluntary muscles except those controlling eye movement and breathing. This is rematonia, and it's essential. It keeps you from thrashing around, from punching or kicking or jumping out of bed while you dream of fighting or fleeing. It's a protective mechanism. Sleep paralysis happens when this mechanism doesn't disengage properly. You become conscious, your awareness returns to the waking world, but your body remains in the paralyzed state of REM sleep. You're awake inside a sleeping body. But the physiological explanation, while accurate, doesn't explain the phenomenology, the specific, consistent features of the experience. Why the sense of malevolent presence? Why the characteristic hallucinations of intruders, demons, shadowy figures? Why the feeling of pressure on the chest, of being held down or sat upon? These features are remarkably consistent across cultures, throughout history, regardless of people's beliefs or expectations. Long before anyone knew about brain chemistry or REM sleep, cultures around the world had names for the sleep paralysis experience. In Newfoundland, it was called being hagged or attacked by the old hag, a witch who would sit on sleepers' chests. In Japanese folklore, it's kanashibari, literally bound by metal, sometimes attributed to ghosts or demons. In Mexican culture, subirse el muerto, which means the dead one climbed on top of you. Similar entities appear in folklore worldwide, the mare in Germanic traditions, from which we get the word nightmare, the incubus and succubus in medieval Europe, the fanam in Thai culture. The specific cultural interpretations vary, but the core features remain the same: paralysis, presence, pressure, terror. Researchers propose that the sense of presence might reflect a hypervigilant state where the brain's threat detection systems misinterpret ambiguous sensory signals in the absence of normal motor control. The pressure on the chest could relate to the restricted breathing patterns that occur during REM atonia. But the consistency of these features across cultures and throughout history remains puzzling. Why do these physical sensations so reliably coalesce into the specific experience of a malevolent presence? Why does the hallucination tend toward the threatening rather than neutral or benign? The specific content and emotional texture of sleep paralysis experiences remains incompletely understood, even as researchers identify the underlying neurophysiology. Related phenomena occur at the boundaries of sleep. Hypnagogic hallucinations happen as you're falling asleep, while hypnopompic hallucinations occur while waking up. These are vivid sensory experiences that can involve any sense. You might see patterns, shapes, or full scenes. Hear voices, music, or strange sounds. Feel sensations of falling, floating, or spinning. Experience the conviction that someone spoke your name or touched your shoulder. For most people, these hallucinations are brief and occasional, but they can be intense and realistic. The boundary between sleep and wake involves a gradual transition where different brain systems activate and deactivate at different rates. During this transition, parts of the dreaming brain might still be active, while consciousness returns, creating experiences that feel real but arise from within. The mystery is why these hallucinations take the forms they do. Why are auditory hallucinations so often voices or one's name being called? Why do visual hallucinations frequently involve geometric patterns or tunnel-like spaces? Why is there so often a feeling of presence or movement? The content seems to have patterns, but we don't understand what determines these patterns or why they're so consistent across individuals. Lucid dreaming presents another mystery. Some people occasionally or regularly become aware that they're dreaming while still in the dream. Once lucid, they can often exert control over the dream environment, deciding where to go, what to do, even what to become. They can fly, transform objects, conjure people, or explore impossible landscapes, all while maintaining dream awareness and some degree of voluntary control. Brain imaging studies have confirmed that lucid dreaming is a distinct state, different from both normal dreaming and waking. It involves increased activity in the prefrontal cortex, areas associated with self-awareness and executive control, while the dreamer remains in REM sleep. This reveals something surprising about consciousness, that self-awareness and voluntary control can coexist with the hallucinatory imagery of dreams. But how? What neural mechanisms allow this hybrid state? And why can some people lucid dream easily, while others never experience it, despite extensive practice? The individual differences and the specific mechanisms that enable lucidity remain unclear. Sleepwalking or somnambulism is equally puzzling. People get up from bed, walk around, sometimes perform complex activities like cooking or driving, all while asleep. Their eyes are typically open. They can navigate around obstacles, but they're not conscious in the normal sense. When awakened, they have little or no memory of the episode. In rare cases, people have committed violence during sleepwalking episodes, raising profound questions about consciousness, intention, and responsibility. Sleepwalking occurs during deep non-REM sleep, when the brain is in a very different state from REM dreaming. Unlike REM, where the body is paralyzed, deep sleep normally keeps the body still through different mechanisms. In sleepwalking, motor systems activate while consciousness remains suppressed. But we don't fully understand what triggers these episodes or why they occur more frequently in children and tend to decrease in adulthood. The neural mechanisms that should keep the body still during sleep have somehow failed, but the causes remain mysterious. Night terrors differ from nightmares in fascinating ways. A nightmare is a frightening dream that wakes you up. You remember it. You can describe what scared you, but a night terror is something else entirely. The person, usually a child, suddenly sits up or bolts from bed, screaming, eyes wide open, heart racing, appearing absolutely terrified. But they're not awake. They're in a state between sleep and waking, not responding to comfort or questions. After several minutes, they calm down and return to sleep, usually with no memory of the episode in the morning. Night terrors occur during deep non-REM sleep, in the transitions between sleep stages. They seem to involve a sudden partial arousal, where the fear systems of the brain activate without full consciousness. But why? What triggers these episodes of pure, wordless terror? And why do they primarily affect children, usually disappearing by adolescence? The developmental pattern and the specific mechanisms remain unexplained. There's also the mystery of why we forget dreams so readily. Upon waking, dreams often feel vivid and memorable, but within minutes, they fade. By the time you finish breakfast, yesterday's dreams are usually gone. This rapid forgetting appears to be an active process, not just passive memory decay. Something about the transition from sleep to waking specifically disrupts dream memories. Researchers have proposed that the neurochemical state shift between sleep and wake might prevent consolidation of dream memories, or that the lack of external temporal markers in dreams makes them difficult to anchor in memory. But the exact mechanisms and reasons for dream forgetting remain unclear. Then there's an interesting timing pattern observed in sleep research. The most intense and vivid dreams, as well as many sleep paralysis episodes, tend to occur later in the night's sleep cycle. This corresponds to periods of longer, more intense REM sleep that become more frequent and prolonged as the night progresses. But the relationship between sleep stage timing and dream content intensity isn't fully understood. What determines when nightmares are most likely to occur? What biological rhythms or neural processes influence the emotional intensity of dreams across the night? These questions remain areas of active research. Social mysteries and the psychology of groups. When humans come together, strange things happen. Behaviors emerge that nobody intends, that everyone might even oppose individually, but that manifest when we're part of a group. Social psychology has documented many of these phenomena, but explaining them, really understanding why they occur, remains difficult. The bystander effect is one of the most disturbing social phenomena ever documented. When something terrible happens in front of a group of people, Each individual is actually less likely to help than if they were alone. More bystanders means less chance that anyone will intervene. This contradicts our intuitions about safety in numbers and moral behavior in public. The phenomenon was first identified and named following the 1964 murder of Kitty Genovese. Initial newspaper reports claimed that 38 people watched or heard her being attacked over more than half an hour without intervening or calling the police. Later investigations revealed this account was significantly exaggerated and some details were inaccurate. However, the incident sparked crucial research into whether groups really do inhibit helping behavior. Laboratory studies have consistently demonstrated that the presence of other bystanders can indeed reduce the likelihood that any one person will help someone in distress, confirming the existence of the effect, even if the original triggering incident was misreported. The proposed mechanism centers on what researchers call diffusion of responsibility. When you're alone and witness someone in trouble, the responsibility clearly falls on you. But in a group, responsibility becomes psychologically distributed across multiple people. Each person may unconsciously assume someone else will act, creating a situation where everyone waits for others to respond. Additionally, people often look to others for cues about how to interpret ambiguous situations. This can create what's termed pluralistic ignorance, where everyone is uncertain. Everyone looks to others for guidance, and everyone misinterprets others' inaction as indicating the situation doesn't require intervention. But here's what remains mysterious. Why is this tendency so strong? Why does it override moral intuitions and personal distress at seeing someone suffer? And why do cultural factors seem to influence its strength, with collectivist societies sometimes showing reduced bystander effects? The deep evolutionary or cognitive roots of the phenomenon remain unclear. We can describe it, replicate it, and partially explain its mechanisms. But the fundamental question of why we're wired this way remains open. The spotlight effect reveals how profoundly self-focused human consciousness is. People dramatically overestimate how much others notice their appearance, behavior, and mistakes. You spill something on your shirt and feel certain everyone is staring, but research shows most people won't even notice. You say something awkward in a meeting and spend the rest of the day replaying it, convinced everyone else is too, but they've likely forgotten it already. The spotlight effect occurs because you're the center of your own attention, the star of your own experience. You notice everything about yourself and naturally assume others do too, but everyone else is equally self-focused, more concerned with their own appearance and behavior than with yours. This cognitive bias causes unnecessary social anxiety and self-consciousness, yet it persists despite experience. What's mysterious is why we don't learn from experience. After countless instances where our feared social catastrophes go unnoticed, why don't we adjust our expectations? Why does the spotlight effect remain so strong, despite evidence that others aren't paying that much attention? The persistence of this bias, its resistance to correction, remains unexplained. Illusory superiority, sometimes called the above-average effect, describes people's tendency to overestimate their positive qualities and underestimate their negative ones relative to others. When surveyed, most people rate themselves above average in almost every positive attribute: intelligence, attractiveness, driving ability, ethical behavior, sense of humor. Mathematically, most people cannot be above average, but most people believe they are. This isn't just ego or dishonesty. People genuinely believe their assessments of themselves. The effect is robust across cultures, though it varies in strength. It seems to involve several cognitive mechanisms. We have more information about our own intentions and circumstances, making us judge ourselves in context while judging others purely on observed behavior. We define traits in ways that favor our own characteristics. If you're introverted, your definition of good social skills might emphasize depth of connection rather than breadth. But the deeper mystery is why evolution would create this bias towards self-enhancement. Accurate self-assessment would seem more adaptive than inflated self-perception. One possibility is that moderate positive illusions increase confidence, which improves performance and social outcomes, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. But this doesn't explain why the bias is so universal, or why it persists even when it causes problems. The ultimate reasons for illusory superiority remain debated. Related to this is the Dunning-Kruger effect, where people with limited competence in a domain greatly overestimate their ability, while experts tend to underestimate their relative skill. The least skilled are often the most confident because they lack the knowledge to recognize their own ignorance. This creates a paradox. The skills needed to be good at something are the same skills needed to recognize how good you are. Without those skills, you can't accurately assess your own performance. The effect has been replicated across numerous domains: humor, grammar, logic, emotional intelligence, medical knowledge. Beginners show high confidence despite low performance, while experts show more modest confidence despite high performance. As people gain expertise, their confidence initially drops as they recognize how much they don't know, before eventually stabilizing at accurate levels. What remains unexplained is exactly why metacognition, thinking about your own thinking, develops this way. Why doesn't ignorance produce uncertainty rather than confidence? What cognitive structures create this specific relationship between competence and self-assessment? The mechanisms behind the Dunning-Kruger effect are still debated, with ongoing discussion about whether it represents a special cognitive bias or just statistical artifacts in measurement. Imposter syndrome represents another self-assessment mystery. High-achieving people often feel like frauds, convinced they've succeeded through luck rather than ability, terrified that others will discover they're not as competent as they appear. Despite evidence of their accomplishments, degrees, awards, and recognition, they cannot internalize their success. They feel like imposters who have somehow fooled everyone. This is not low self-esteem. People with imposter syndrome may have generally positive self-regard, but specific, intense doubts about their professional competence. It's not incompetence. Imposters are often objectively successful, and it's not rare. Studies suggest 60 to 80% of people experience imposter feelings at some point, particularly when entering new roles or fields. The mystery is why external validation doesn't correct these feelings. Why doesn't success convince imposters of their competence? One possibility involves attribution patterns, attributing success to external factors like luck or help, while attributing failures to internal factors like lack of ability. But this raises further questions about why people develop these particular attribution patterns. The persistence of imposter syndrome, despite contradictory evidence, remains puzzling. Social loafing describes how people exert less effort when working in groups than when working alone. In group projects, individuals typically contribute less than they would if working individually on the same task. This happens even when people are unaware of it, and even when they value the group's success. The presence of others somehow reduces individual effort. Research suggests several mechanisms: diffusion of responsibility, where individuals feel less personally accountable in groups; coordination loss, where the complexity of working with others reduces efficiency; and motivation loss, where people assume others will compensate for their reduced effort. But why is this tendency so strong? Why doesn't commitment to the group or desire for success override it? The deep reasons for social loafing and the conditions under which it can be overcome remain incompletely understood. Mirror touch synesthesia, which we touched on earlier, has profound implications for understanding empathy and social connection. People with this condition literally feel others' sensations. When they see someone in pain, they feel pain. When they see someone touched affectionately, they feel warmth. This suggests that empathy might have a physical, embodied dimension that goes beyond cognitive perspective taking. The mystery involves the spectrum of human empathy. We all have mirror neurons that respond to others' actions and emotions. But in most people, these responses remain implicit, unconscious. Only in mirror touch synesthetes do they become explicit, felt sensations. This raises profound questions about the nature of empathy, connection, and the boundaries between self and other. Why are these boundaries so rigid in most people and permeable in synesthetes? What determines where each person falls on this spectrum? These questions remain open. The puzzles of perception and cognition. Our thinking feels so rational, so logical. We make decisions, form beliefs, solve problems. But cognitive psychology has revealed that human thinking is riddled with systematic errors, biases that lead us predictably astray. What's fascinating is that knowing about these biases rarely helps us avoid them. They operate at such deep levels of cognition that awareness doesn't override them. The clustering illusion is a bias where we see patterns in random data. Flip a coin 100 times, and you'll likely get several runs of 4 or 5 heads in a row. This is perfectly normal, what random sequences look like. But people interpret these clusters as non-random, as evidence that the coin is biased, or that some force is influencing the flips. After 3 heads in a row, people often feel the next flip is more likely to be tails, despite each flip being independent with 50-50 odds. This bias extends everywhere. We see hot streaks in sports that are likely just random variation. We detect patterns in stock markets that are probably just noise. We find meaning in coincidences that are statistically unremarkable. The human brain seems designed to find patterns, even where none exist. This makes sense evolutionarily. Better to detect a false pattern than miss a real threat. But it means we live in a world where we constantly perceive order, meaning, and causation in what might be randomness. What remains mysterious is why this bias is so resistant to correction. Professional statisticians, people who deeply understand randomness and probability, still experience the clustering illusion. They know rationally that these patterns are random, but perceptually, the patterns still seem significant. The disconnect between intellectual understanding and perceptual experience remains unexplained. Confirmation bias is perhaps the most important cognitive bias for understanding human belief and reasoning. Once we form a belief, we unconsciously seek information that confirms it, while ignoring or dismissing information that contradicts it. We interpret ambiguous evidence as supporting our existing beliefs. We remember confirming instances more readily than disconfirming ones. We ask questions designed to elicit confirmatory answers. This bias affects everyone, regardless of intelligence or education. In fact, smarter people might be better at generating sophisticated arguments for their pre-existing beliefs, making confirmation bias even stronger. The bias extends to perception. People with different political beliefs can watch the same video of a protest and see completely different events, each seeing confirmation of their prior views. We understand many mechanisms behind confirmation bias. People want to be right, So confirming evidence feels validating, while disconfirming evidence threatens self-image. The brain's learning systems may be optimized for stability, making beliefs resistant to change. But what remains unclear is why this bias is so strong, so universal, and so difficult to overcome. Why did evolution create minds that lock onto beliefs and resist updating them? The answer probably involves trade-offs between flexibility and stability, but the details remain debated. The availability heuristic describes how we judge likelihood by how easily examples come to mind. Events that are vivid, recent, or emotionally charged feel more probable than events that are abstract or emotionally neutral, regardless of actual frequency. People fear plane crashes more than car accidents, even though car accidents are vastly more common, because plane crashes are dramatic and memorable. After seeing news coverage of a shark attack, people overestimate the risk of shark attacks, even though the statistical risk hasn't changed. This heuristic is efficient in many contexts. Things that come to mind easily are often frequent or important, but the bias can lead to systematic errors in risk perception and decision-making. What's mysterious is why the heuristic is so automatic, so unconscious. Even when people know the actual statistics, the availability of examples still influences their gut-level sense of risk. Why does subjective availability override objective information? The neural mechanisms that make certain memories more accessible than others, and how that accessibility translates into probability estimates, remain partially understood. Hindsight bias makes events seem more predictable after they occur. Once you know the outcome, you can't unsee it. You feel like you knew it all along, that the outcome was obvious or inevitable. After an election, people misremember their predictions, believing they predicted the winner even if they didn't. After an accident, investigators see the causes as obvious, wondering why no one prevented it, forgetting that before the accident the situation was much more ambiguous. This bias has serious consequences. It makes us overconfident in our ability to predict the future, and too harsh in judging others for failing to predict what seems obvious in retrospect. It impairs learning from experience, since we can't properly analyze what went wrong if we misremember how uncertain things were. But why does hindsight create this sense of inevitability? Why can't we maintain our memory of uncertainty once we know the outcome? The cognitive mechanisms behind hindsight bias remain incompletely explained. The sunk cost fallacy describes continuing to invest in something because of past investment, even when continuing makes no sense. You keep watching a bad movie because you've already watched half of it. You stay in a relationship that isn't working because you've already invested years. You continue a business project that's clearly failing because of the money already spent. The past investment, which is gone regardless of what you do now, irrationally influences present decisions. Rationally, only future costs and benefits should matter for present decisions. Past costs are sunk, irrecoverable, irrelevant to what you should do now. But psychologically, abandoning something you've invested in feels like admitting waste, accepting loss, acknowledging that past effort was for nothing. So people continue investing, trying to justify past decisions, often increasing their total loss. What's mysterious about the sunk cost fallacy is its strength despite the clear irrationality. People understand rationally that sunk costs shouldn't matter, yet they continue to influence decisions. Even explaining the fallacy to people doesn't reliably help them avoid it. There seems to be a deep emotional or motivational component that logical understanding cannot override. Why is the need to justify past investments so powerful? The psychological roots of sunk cost reasoning remain unclear. Choice paralysis, or the paradox of choice, reveals that more options don't always make decisions easier or outcomes better. When faced with too many choices, people often struggle to decide at all, feel less satisfied with their eventual choice, and experience more regret. A supermarket offering 30 varieties of jam might sell less than one offering 6 because 30 choices is overwhelming. This contradicts assumptions about preference and freedom. We believe more choice is better, that freedom means having options. But research suggests there's an optimal level of choice. Too few options limits freedom, but too many creates anxiety, decision fatigue, and opportunity cost awareness. Every chosen option means multiple unchosen alternatives, creating regret about roads not taken. Why does the brain struggle with abundant choice? One possibility involves computational limits. Evaluating many options is cognitively expensive. Another involves value uncertainty. With many similar options, it's harder to determine which is truly best. But the exact mechanisms and why different people have different tolerance for choice complexity remain unclear. The planning fallacy describes the tendency to underestimate how long tasks will take or how much they'll cost, even with relevant past experience. People consistently predict optimistically, then consistently overrun their predictions. Students estimate assignments will take less time than they actually do. Renovators predict lower costs than ultimately occur. Governments forecast completion dates for infrastructure projects that prove wildly optimistic. This isn't just wishful thinking. People genuinely believe their optimistic estimates, even as evidence accumulates that they're typically wrong. The bias persists despite repeated experience with overruns. One explanation involves focusing on the best-case scenario while neglecting possible obstacles. Another involves failing to adequately learn from past experience, treating each new project as unique rather than comparable to previous ones. But why is this bias so resistant to correction? Why don't people learn to pad their estimates? The persistence of planning optimism remains somewhat mysterious. Cognitive dissonance is the uncomfortable tension that arises when you hold contradictory beliefs or when your behavior conflicts with your values. This tension is psychologically aversive, and people are motivated to reduce it. But here's what's fascinating. Rather than changing beliefs or behavior, people often change their attitudes to justify their behavior or reconcile their beliefs. Classic experiments show that people who are induced to act contrary to their attitudes, like writing an essay, arguing for a position they disagree with, often shift their attitudes to become more consistent with their behavior. People who make difficult decisions become more satisfied with their choice and more critical of the unchosen alternative after the decision, as if justifying the choice retroactively. In one famous study, participants who experienced severe initiation to join a group rated the group more positively, as if justifying their suffering. Cognitive dissonance reveals something profound about the relationship between belief and behavior. We think beliefs drive behavior, that we act on our convictions, but often behavior drives beliefs. We're motivated to see ourselves as consistent and will adjust our beliefs to match our behavior rather than admit inconsistency. What's mysterious is why consistency is so psychologically important. Why does contradiction create such discomfort? And why do we resolve dissonance through belief change rather than always changing behavior? The deep motivational roots of cognitive dissonance remain debated. Strange sensations and unexpected experiences. Beyond the major categories of memory, perception, and cognition, there exist dozens of smaller mysteries, odd experiences that many people have had, but that psychology struggles to fully explain. These are the curious phenomena at the edges of mental life. Phantom phone vibrations, also called ringxiety or phantom vibration syndrome, occur when you feel your phone vibrate in your pocket, but when you check, there's no notification. Studies have found that a remarkably high percentage of smartphone users, possibly as many as 90% in some surveys, report having experienced this at least once. Your brain has become so attuned to the sensation of phone vibrations, so primed to detect them, that it sometimes generates the sensation without external stimulus. But why is the brain creating false sensations? Is this a form of sensory hallucination? And why specifically with phones rather than other regular stimuli? Semantic satiation is the strange phenomenon where a word temporarily loses its meaning through repetition. Pick any word, even a common one you use every day. Say it 30 times rapidly. Bowl, 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 bowl. At first it's a word with meaning, but as you continue, something shifts. It becomes pure sound, stripped of semantic content. The phonemes remain, but the meaning drains away, leaving only acoustic noise. After a brief pause, meaning returns. This reveals something about how language works in the brain. Meaning isn't intrinsic to sounds. It's something the brain adds, a connection between auditory pattern and conceptual content. Semantic satiation appears to temporarily disrupt that connection, possibly through neural adaptation or fatigue in language processing areas. But the exact mechanism remains unclear, as does the question of why this happens with words, but not other types of patterns or associations. The Bader-Meinhof phenomenon, or frequency illusion, occurs when you learn about something new and then suddenly start seeing it everywhere. You learn a new word and hear it 3 times in the next day. You discover a previously unknown band and then see references to them repeatedly. It's not that the thing has become more common, it's that you're now noticing it. Your attention has been primed and the item has moved from background noise into conscious awareness. 2 mechanisms seem involved. Selective attention, where your brain now notices what it previously filtered out, and confirmation bias, where noticing a few instances creates the impression of increased frequency. But the subjective experience remains striking. The feeling isn't just, I'm noticing this more. It's, this is suddenly everywhere. This cannot be coincidence. Why does the phenomenon create such a strong sense of meaningful pattern rather than just increased noticing? This phenomenological aspect remains mysterious. The tip of the tongue phenomenon is that frustrating state where you know that you know something but can't quite retrieve it. You're trying to remember a name, a word, a title. You can feel it there, right at the edge of recall. You might know its first letter, or how many syllables it has, or words that rhyme with it, but the word itself won't come. And then, often when you stop trying, it suddenly surfaces. This reveals the complexity of memory retrieval. Information is stored, but not immediately accessible. Partial information is available, like the general meaning and structural features, but the full representation remains blocked. The phenomenon suggests that remembering involves multiple stages or systems, and that retrieval can fail at different points. But we don't fully understand what creates the specific blocking, or why relaxing conscious effort sometimes releases the block. L'esprit de l'escalier, a French phrase meaning staircase wit, describes thinking of the perfect response or comeback after the moment has passed. You're in a conversation or argument. Someone says something cutting and you're caught off guard. Later, after the conversation ends, the perfect reply comes to you. If only you'd thought of it during the actual interaction. The Germans call this Treppenwitz, and the feeling is universal. Too late, the perfect words arrive. This speaks to how thinking works under pressure. In the moment, the social emotional load is high. You're processing the other person's words, managing your own emotional response. maintaining the conversation. This occupies cognitive resources. Only later, when the situation has ended and cognitive load has decreased, can you fully process what was said and generate optimal responses. But why doesn't practice make this better? Even people who frequently debate or speak publicly experience l'esprit de l'escalier. The constraints on real-time response generation remain poorly understood. Earworms, those fragments of songs that get stuck in your head and replay endlessly, are a nearly universal experience. A few bars of music lodge in your mind and repeat involuntarily for hours or even days. You can't stop hearing it. Often it's not even a song you like, just something catchy that your brain has latched onto. The more you try to stop thinking about it, the more persistently it plays. Research suggests earworms involve the brain's auditory imagery systems, the same mechanisms that let you hear music in your mind. Certain types of songs are more likely to become earworms, those with simple, repetitive melodies and common rhythms. But why does repetition become involuntary? And why is trying to suppress an earworm often counterproductive? The mechanisms behind auditory imagery loops remain incompletely explained. The uncanny valley is a psychological phenomenon in human-robot interaction and computer animation. As robots or animated characters become more human-like, our emotional response becomes more positive. But at a certain point, when they're very human-like, but not quite human, the response sharply becomes negative. They seem eerie, unsettling, wrong. This dip in emotional response is the uncanny valley. Once the robot or character becomes indistinguishable from human, the response becomes positive again. The uncanny valley was identified by roboticist Masahiro Mori in 1970, but we still don't fully understand why it exists. One theory suggests almost human things trigger pathogen avoidance, resembling sick or dead humans. Another proposes they violate expectations, creating cognitive dissonance between appearance and behavior. The phenomenon seems real and reproducible, but its evolutionary and cognitive origins remain debated. Misophonia is an intense, often overwhelming negative emotional response to specific sounds. For people with misophonia, sounds like chewing, breathing, tapping fingers on a table, or pen clicking can trigger immediate anxiety, anger, or even rage. The response is involuntary, automatic, and completely out of proportion to the stimulus. The person knows rationally that the sound doesn't warrant this extreme reaction. They're getting furious that someone breathing is unreasonable, but the emotional response is uncontrollable, arising before conscious thought can intervene. The triggers tend to be specific and consistent for each person. One individual might be triggered by chewing sounds, but unbothered by tapping, while another has the opposite pattern. The response can range from mild discomfort to overwhelming emotional distress that drives them to leave the room, end relationships, or avoid social situations entirely. In severe cases, misophonia can be life-disrupting, affecting work, family relationships, and quality of life. Misophonia appears to involve abnormal activation in brain regions that process both sound and emotion, with research suggesting unusually strong connections between auditory cortex and limbic system, the brain's emotional centers. Brain imaging studies have shown that trigger sounds activate both auditory processing areas and emotion-related regions more intensely in people with misophonia than in controls. But why specific sounds? Why are the trigger sounds so often mouth-related? The sounds of eating, breathing, swallowing. Why repetitive sounds like tapping or clicking? And why does the condition appear more common than previously recognized, with some estimates suggesting it may affect a notable portion of the population, though research into prevalence is still developing. The origins and mechanisms of misophonia remain an active area of investigation. Extraordinary minds and savant abilities. Among the greatest mysteries in psychology are those rare individuals whose minds work in ways that seem to transcend normal human capacity. Savants, people with profound abilities in specific domains, despite overall cognitive impairment, challenge our understanding of intelligence, memory, and the brain's potential. Savant syndrome often co-occurs with autism spectrum conditions, intellectual disabilities, or follows certain types of brain injury. Research indicates that approximately 1 in 10 individuals on the autism spectrum may demonstrate some savant abilities, though the skills can also emerge after specific forms of brain damage. The abilities manifest in highly specific domains: calendar calculation, musical performance without formal training, artistic talent, rapid mathematical computation, mechanical aptitude, or extraordinary memory for certain types of information. Yet, these remarkable islands of ability exist alongside significant challenges in other cognitive or social domains. The most famous savant abilities involve memory and calculation. Some savants can memorize entire books after reading them once. Others can calculate the day of the week for any date in history or future, often faster than someone using a calculator. Some can multiply large numbers in their heads or extract cube roots mentally. Yet these same individuals might struggle with simple conversation or basic self-care. What remains puzzling is how these extraordinary abilities emerge from compromised cognitive systems. One theoretical framework proposes that brain damage or atypical development might reduce inhibitory mechanisms that normally filter information, potentially allowing savants to access raw, perceptual, or computational processes that typically operate outside conscious awareness. Another line of thinking suggests that reduced function in certain brain regions, particularly in the left hemisphere, may allow compensatory enhancement of abilities associated with other regions. However, neither explanation fully accounts for why specific skills emerge in particular individuals, or why these abilities remain so narrowly focused, rather than generalizing to related domains. There's also the documented but rare phenomenon of acquired savant syndrome, where extraordinary abilities emerge suddenly following brain injury. Case studies describe individuals who, after sustaining head trauma, develop remarkable skills they never possessed before. The ability to play complex musical pieces without formal training, extraordinary mathematical or artistic abilities, or the capacity to perceive intricate geometric patterns everywhere. These cases, while uncommon, raise intriguing questions about latent capabilities that might exist in many neural systems, but remain inhibited during normal functioning. Whether these represent true emergence of new abilities or the unmasking of previously suppressed capacities remains a subject of ongoing investigation. This raises profound questions about human cognitive potential. Could there be extraordinary processing abilities present in many neural systems, normally kept in check by inhibitory mechanisms? If so, what would it mean about the relationship between our everyday cognitive function and hidden capacities? The implications remain speculative but thought-provoking, suggesting that what we consider normal cognition might represent a particular balance between competing neural processes, rather than the full range of what human brains can achieve. Absolute pitch, or perfect pitch, is the ability to identify or produce musical notes without external reference. Someone with absolute pitch can hear a car horn and identify it as a specific note. They can sing a requested note without hearing it first. The ability is rare in the general population, with estimates varying widely depending on the study and population examined, though prevalence appears notably higher among those with early musical training. Research suggests that all infants might initially possess some form of absolute pitch sensitivity, but most lose it during development as the brain shifts to relative pitch processing, which proves more flexible and useful for most musical contexts. People who maintain absolute pitch typically began musical training very early, often before age 6 or 7, which may help preserve neural connections that would otherwise be eliminated. However, this doesn't fully account for the phenomenon, as not all early trained musicians develop absolute pitch. What neural or genetic factors determine who maintains this ability remains an open question in music cognition research. Eidetic memory, often called photographic memory, is the supposed ability to recall visual images with extraordinary precision. The term eidetic refers to extremely vivid mental imagery that persists briefly after viewing a scene, detailed enough that the person can describe minor elements they didn't consciously notice. True eidetic memory is rare and primarily found in children, often disappearing by adolescence. Many claimed cases of photographic memory in adults turn out to be exceptional memory through techniques or extraordinary dedication, rather than fundamentally different memory mechanisms. Whether truly photographic memory exists in adults remains debated. Some individuals show memory abilities that seem far beyond normal. Chess masters who can recall exact board positions from games played years ago, or artists who can draw entire cityscapes from memory after brief viewing. But detailed investigation usually reveals these abilities involve learned techniques, extensive practice, and domain expertise, rather than a qualitatively different memory system. The line between exceptional memory and truly photographic recall remains unclear. Hyperthymesia, or highly superior autobiographical memory, is a documented but extremely rare condition where people can remember every day of their life in extraordinary detail. Ask them what happened on April 15th, 2003, and they can tell you what they ate, what the weather was like, what they wore, what news they read, who they spoke with. Every day is catalogued, accessible in vivid detail. This might sound like a superpower, but people with hyperthymesia often describe it as burdensome. They cannot forget. Every embarrassment, every hurt, every boring moment is preserved and accessible. They spend excessive time mentally reviewing the past. The inability to forget might be as challenging as the ability to remember is impressive. But what creates this condition? Why doesn't normal forgetting occur? The neural basis of hyperthymesia remains poorly understood, studied in only a few dozen confirmed cases worldwide. The deepest mysteries of mind and self. As we move toward the end of our journey through unexplained psychology, we encounter the deepest mysteries of all. These are questions not just about specific phenomena, but about the fundamental nature of consciousness, self, and subjective experience. The hard problem of consciousness, as philosopher David Chalmers termed it, asks why there is subjective experience at all. We understand, increasingly well, the neural mechanisms of perception, memory, and behavior. We can map which brain regions activate during different tasks. We can predict behavior from brain activity. But none of this explains why there is something it's like to be conscious, why experience has a subjective, felt quality. This is different from the easy problems of consciousness, the questions about how the brain processes information or generates behavior. The hard problem asks about qualia, the subjective qualities of experience. What is it like to see red, to feel pain, to experience the taste of coffee, Science can describe the neural correlates of these experiences, but it cannot explain why those neural processes are accompanied by subjective feels. Some philosophers argue there is no hard problem, that once we fully understand the physical mechanisms, consciousness will be explained. Others propose that consciousness is fundamental to the universe, that subjective experience cannot be reduced to physical processes. Still others suggest our current conceptual frameworks are inadequate, that we need entirely new ways of thinking about mind and matter. After decades of debate, we remain without consensus. The hard problem stands as perhaps the deepest mystery in all of science. Out-of-body experiences provide another window into consciousness mysteries. People report the sensation of viewing their body from outside, often from above, seeing themselves and the surrounding environment from an external perspective. These experiences can occur during sleep paralysis, under anesthesia, during meditation, or in near-death situations. They feel utterly real to those experiencing them, more vivid and coherent than dreams. Research has shown that out-of-body experiences can be induced artificially through brain stimulation or virtual reality, suggesting they involve disruptions in the brain's sense of bodily position and perspective. But this doesn't fully explain the phenomenology. Why does the experience take the specific form of an external viewpoint? Why is it so consistent across cases? And what does it reveal about the relationship between consciousness and the body? The subjective reality of these experiences remains mysterious, even as we identify neural mechanisms. Near-death experiences present similar puzzles. People who come close to death during cardiac arrest or severe trauma sometimes report profound experiences, moving through a tunnel toward light, feeling profound peace, encountering deceased relatives, reviewing their life, feeling unconditional love. These reports are remarkably consistent across cultures, though cultural factors influence some details. Skeptics point to neurological explanations: oxygen deprivation, endorphin release, temporal lobe activity. These mechanisms might explain some features of the experiences. But people who have had near-death experiences often insist that what they experienced was more real than normal reality, not less. They describe it as hyperreal, more vivid and meaningful than ordinary consciousness. Some report accurate perceptions of events during their clinical death that they shouldn't have been able to perceive. Whether near-death experiences reveal something about consciousness, life after death, or just the dying brain, remains one of psychology's most contentious mysteries. Ego dissolution, the temporary loss of sense of self, can occur during intense meditation, psychedelic experiences, or certain neurological events. The boundaries between self and world seem to dissolve. There's awareness, experience, but no sense of being a separate individual, having the experience. Some describe it as merging with the universe, others as awareness without self. This phenomenon challenges our understanding of the self. Is the sense of being a distinct individual, fundamental to consciousness, or is it a construction that can be deconstructed? Buddhist philosophy has long claimed that the self is an illusion, and ego dissolution seems to support this. But if the self is constructed, what is doing the constructing? And what remains during ego dissolution? The experiences suggest that consciousness can exist without self, but the implications remain deeply puzzling. The development of theory of mind, the understanding that other people have minds, beliefs, and perspectives different from your own, is a developmental milestone, usually achieved around age 4. Before this, children are egocentric, unable to recognize that others might know or believe different things. The classic test involves showing a child where an object is hidden, then having someone who didn't see the hiding try to find it. Can the child recognize that the other person doesn't know what the child knows? What's mysterious is how this ability develops. What changes in the brain or cognition allows the child to suddenly model other minds? And why does this development occur at roughly the same age across cultures? Some researchers propose it involves language development or social experience. Others point to specific neural maturation, but the full explanation remains elusive. And the question becomes even stranger when we consider that while children typically develop theory of mind, individuals with autism often struggle with it throughout life. What is different about the autistic brain that makes modeling other minds so difficult? Metacognition, thinking about your own thinking, involves another level of mystery. You can think about what you're thinking, evaluate whether your thinking is good or bad, monitor your own understanding, regulate your cognitive processes. This recursive ability, thinking about thinking, seems uniquely developed in humans. It's what allows us to reflect, to learn from experience, to improve our thinking over time. But how does the brain achieve this? How can a system be both the object and subject of thought? What neural architecture allows for this reflexivity? And why is metacognition so difficult, requiring sustained effort and practice? The mechanisms behind our ability to observe and regulate our own minds remain incompletely understood. There are also limits to introspection that reveal the strangeness of self-knowledge. Much of what determines our behavior, preferences, and decisions occurs unconsciously. We cannot directly observe these processes. When asked why we made a decision or feel a certain way, we often confabulate, generating plausible sounding but inaccurate explanations. We think we're reporting our actual reasons, but we're really constructing post hoc rationalizations. This means that despite being the one person who has complete access to our own experiences, we often don't truly know ourselves. We're strangers to our own minds, observing our behavior and inferring our motives, just as we observe and infer about others. The limits of self-knowledge, the extent to which we are opaque to ourselves, remain a profound mystery, resting in mystery. And so we come to the end of our journey through 100 unexplained facts of psychology. We've wandered through the territories of memory and perception, discovering how unreliable our recollections are, how easily our minds construct false pasts and shared illusions. We've explored the landscape of sleep and dreams, those mysterious altered states where consciousness transforms into something strange and unpredictable. We've examined social mysteries and cognitive puzzles, the ways groups change individual behavior, and the systematic errors that riddle human thinking. We've encountered extraordinary abilities and the deepest questions about consciousness itself. 100 facts, 100 mysteries, 100 reminders that for all we've learned about the human mind in the past century of psychological research, vast territories remain unmapped, profound questions remain unanswered. What strikes me most profoundly about these mysteries is not what they reveal about our ignorance, though they certainly do reveal how much we still don't know. What strikes me is what they reveal about the nature of mind itself, about the fundamental strangeness of consciousness and subjective experience. Consciousness is not a solved problem patiently waiting to be answered. It's not a machine whose workings will one day become fully transparent, completely understood, predictable down to the finest detail. It's something stranger than that, something that resists complete explanation, even as we probe it with increasingly sophisticated tools. even as we map neural circuits and measure brain waves and identify neurotransmitters and trace pathways through the folded architecture of the cortex. These mysteries remind us that we are more than the sum of our neurons, more complex than our genes, more mysterious than we often recognize in the routines of daily life. We are walking paradoxes, beings capable of understanding the fundamental forces that shape the universe, able to peer into the hearts of distant galaxies and probe the nature of subatomic particles, yet unable to fully explain why we see red instead of experiencing some other quale, or why we remember yesterday better than we remember last week, or why we feel the presence of someone watching us in an empty room. We contain multitudes, as Walt Whitman wrote, and those multitudes include not just the complexity of trillions of neural connections, but something stranger, something that feels from the inside like nothing else in the known universe. Consider what it means to be you, reading or hearing these words right now. You have memories stretching back through time, a history that feels uniquely yours, even though some of it might be false. Even though your brain has been quietly editing and reconstructing your past every time you remember it. You have perceptions of the world around you, but those perceptions are constructions, interpretations, filtered and shaped by expectations and attention and the particular quirks of your individual sensory systems. You have thoughts and feelings that arise mysteriously from neural activity, but thoughts and feelings that seem utterly different from mere biological processes that carry meaning and intention and that ineffable quality of what its likeness that we cannot reduce to physical description. You are conscious in a way that remains inexplicable. You are aware of being aware. You can think about your thinking. You can observe your own mind at work, though imperfectly, though you're often mistaken about why you think what you think, or want what you want. You experience time as a flow, a river, carrying you from past toward future. Even though physics tells us time doesn't flow, the past and future might be equally real or equally illusory. You have a sense of self, a feeling of being a unified person despite being composed of countless subsystems, despite the fact that different parts of your brain often work at cross purposes, despite mounting evidence that the self you experience might be more narrative construction than actual thing. And you sleep, entering altered states every night where the boundaries of reality dissolve, where impossible things become normal, where you can fly or meet people who've died or find yourself back in childhood homes that no longer exist. You dream stories without trying, narratives that unfold without planning, experiences that seem utterly real until you wake and realize they were hallucinations generated entirely within your skull. Sometimes you remember these dreams. Sometimes you forget them within minutes. Sometimes you become aware within dreams that you're dreaming, achieving a hybrid state where consciousness observes its own creations. Sometimes you wake, but your body doesn't, trapped in sleep paralysis while shadow figures approach your bed. The boundaries between sleep and wake, between real and imagined, between self and other, prove far more permeable, far stranger than we assume during our waking hours. You live among others, billions of other conscious beings, each carrying their own private universe of experience that you can never fully access. You can observe their behavior, hear their words, see their expressions, but you can never directly experience what it's like to be them, can never step inside their consciousness and feel what they feel. We are islands of awareness in a sea of other islands, able to communicate across the gaps, but never to truly merge, never to fully understand another's inner life. And yet sometimes those boundaries blur, as in mirror-touch synesthesia, where observation becomes sensation, or in deep empathy, where another's pain becomes your pain. The line between self and other proves less absolute than it appears. What does it mean to be a person, to have experiences, to remember and forget, to perceive and misperceive, to know and be deceived, to wake and sleep and dream, to be together with others, yet ultimately alone in your own consciousness, to be capable of love and creativity and transcendence, while also being subject to predictable cognitive biases and systematic errors. These are not just scientific questions, problems to be solved with more research and better instruments. They're existential questions, philosophical questions, questions that touch on the deepest aspects of what it means to be human and alive and aware in this strange universe. As you rest tonight, perhaps already drifting towards sleep or hovering in that liminal space between wake and dream, carried by these thoughts through the mysterious landscapes of consciousness, remember that you are a mystery. Your mind doing whatever it's doing right now, whatever that is exactly, listening to these words or transforming them into dreams, or already slipping away into the colorful hallucinations of sleep, performing this ongoing miracle of awareness that we cannot fully explain, is one of the strangest, most wonderful, most improbable phenomena in the known universe. You are conscious. You are aware. You have subjective experience. And despite everything we've learned, despite all the scanning and measuring and theorizing, we still don't really know how or why. You are inexplicable. You are mysterious. And that's not a problem to be solved, but a wonder to be appreciated, a gift to be received with humility and awe. The unexplained aspects of psychology, these 100 mysteries we've explored together, are not failures of science. They're not gaps in knowledge that will eventually be filled, leaving nothing but complete understanding. They're windows into something deeper, glimpses of the profound strangeness that underlies all existence. They remind us that reality is more mysterious, more wonderful, more resistant to final explanation than we often acknowledge in our daily lives. They invite us to approach ourselves and others with curiosity rather than certainty, with wonder rather than presumption, with humility rather than the illusion of complete understanding. If these explorations have given you a quiet way to end your day, if they've sparked your curiosity or helped carry you toward rest, consider subscribing to the channel and sharing these journeys with others who might find comfort in the calm exploration of mysteries. Every like, every share, every comment helps build this community of curious, thoughtful, restful people who find peace in questions rather than only in answers, who can settle into not knowing without anxiety, who recognize that the unexplained can be a source of wonder rather than worry. Sleep well tonight, wherever you are. Dream strange dreams. Let your unconscious mind weave its mysterious narratives. Wake tomorrow to wonder, and remember that in a universe where consciousness itself remains unexplained, where your own mind is still fundamentally mysterious to science and to yourself, where subjective experience arises from matter in ways we cannot fully fathom, anything seems possible. The unexplained surrounds us, fills us, runs through us, defines us. We are made of mystery, and that's not something to fear or fix, but something to cherish, to protect, to honor. That's what makes life worth living, what makes each day an adventure, what makes existence itself a gift. Good night. Rest well in the arms of mystery. Let the unknown be a comfort rather than a threat. And thank you for wandering with me through these 100 unexplained territories of the mind. Until next time, sleep peacefully, and remember, you are more mysterious than you know.